This is Liberty Under Attack Radio, hosted by Shane and Matt. Your place for documented truth and where freedom is the only agenda. We must end the terror war.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Liberty Under Attack Radio. As always, I'm your host Shane, and I'm joined by my co-host Matt. Matt, how's it going, brother?
All right.
Good to hear. What's going on in good old West Virginia today?
The weather's nice.
Weather's nice? All right, well, that's always a good thing. Okay, so you can join in on the discussion by calling 567-314-9296 or on Skype at FPRN Radio Live. If you're away from your computer, you can listen on your mobile device by using the Listen Live line provided by Audio Now. The number is 712-432-4365. You can also tune in to all of your favorite FPRN radio shows, like TuneIn Radio, on apps like TuneIn Radio, Shoutcast, and Stitcher. Lastly, if you've got something to add, feel free to email Shane at libertyunderattack.com. First off, as I did last show, I'd like to point you in the direction of the website, libertyunderattack.com. Matt's new edition of the Terror Industrial Complex and You is up. Tomorrow at some point, it will be up on FPRN as well. Definitely go check it out. Also, if you want to stay updated with Liberty Under Attack, there is an email subscribe button on the main page. We'll send out some updates, reminders, and crucial information on those emails. You can also find us on Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, and Zeekly, and all of those links can be found on the website. So tonight's subjects are extremely important. They should definitely connect some dots for you, the listeners. These topics will be the Open Skies Treaty, the Global Disarmament Bill, and SERCO, SODEXO, the biggest corporations you've never heard of. At face value, they may appear unconnected. But when you look at history, the reach, and the globalization of these corporations, they have been and are managing nearly every facet of the United States government. The Open Skies Treaty and the Global Disarmament Bill are rarely spoken of. They've also both been shown openly in mainstream media, yet it seems most people don't even notice. In addition to that, the only president who cared about the people was the one who signed it. In summary, the Open Skies Treaty is a way to ensure all countries and nations around the world are upholding their oath to disarm. The Global Disarmament Bill is the game plan for here in America at least, and also the world as well. So for this topic, Matt and I would like to give a shout out to Christy Sumer and her research on SERCO. The web of SERCO and SODEXO spans all around the world, from managing atomic weapons to operating tour buses and a great deal in between. They're heavily involved in the U.S. and U.K. governments and 15 other countries around the world. In the United States, they manage the Intelligence Agency, the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, and have the contract for Obamacare. We figured the easiest way to present this information was in visual form. We also apologize if these lists are long and mundane, but it's important that you see these connections, and you will realize that as we get into this broadcast. These companies are huge, but the majority of folks have never heard of them. They are rarely, if ever, covered in mainstream media stories, and they don't advertise to the public like Google and Microsoft. Reason being, there's no need to. They work directly with governments, cities, and businesses all over the world. I'd like to end with a quote from Michael Hero Perez. It's very relevant. Quote, "All the mega corporations on the planet make their obscene profits off of the labor and suffering of others with complete disregard for the effects on the workers, environment, and future generations. As with the banking sector, they play games with the lives of millions, hysterically reject any kind of government intervention when the profits are rolling in, but are quick to pass the bill for the cleanup and the far-reaching consequences of these avoidable tragedies to the public when things go wrong. We have a straightforward proposal. If they want public money, we want public control. It's that simple." End quote. Make sure to have pen and paper or your laptop at the ready and take notes. Secondly, listen to everyone, read everything, believe nothing unless you can substantiate it in your own research. Let us begin. Okay. Again, my name's Shane. My co-host is Matt.
Hello, everyone.
And we've already covered the subject matter here, so we will go ahead and continue. I figured I'd give us a small example here. These plans have been in place for a long time. Some of it is already even law, like the Global Disarmament Bill. But to succeed in these objectives, the public must be persuaded. In other words, deceived, brainwashed, propagandized, etc. The gun control issue in America is the way they are swaying public opinion towards disarmament. Okay, so I like to start with William Cooper. I apologize, don't know what's going on here. All right, so I like to start with William Cooper. For those who don't know who he is, he published Behold a Pale Horse in 1991, predicted about everything we were seeing today. He also predicted 9/11 on June 28, 2001. Whatever is going to be blamed on Osama bin Laden, don't you even believe it. So this is a quote. This is a quote from his book. The government encouraged the manufacture and importation of firearms for the criminals to use. This is intended to foster a feeling of insecurity, which would lead the American people to voluntarily disarm themselves by passing laws against firearms. Using drugs and hypnosis on mental patients in a process called Orion, the CIA inculcated the desire in these people to open fire on schoolyards and thus inflame the anti-gun lobby. This plan is well underway and so far is working perfectly. The middle class is begging the government to do away with the Second Amendment. Thought I'd mention this too. Bill also found another connection. This is an author's note. He found out he realized that all the they were all either ex-mental patients or were on the drug Prozac, or maybe through an electronic brain implant or microwave or ELF intrusion. Let's focus on that, the ELF intrusion. So this is one way that they are inculcating the desire into these people to push their disarmament scheme. So, for those who are unaware, Navy Yard shooter Aaron Alexis carved my ELF weapon into the stock of his gun. He was a mental patient, heard voices, and said that people are using some sort of a microwave machine. And he also had high-level security clearance in the military. So let's get started here. Matt, you got anything to add to that first part, brother? There, Matt?
Where are we at, Shane? Sorry.
Oh, no problem. Got anything to add to the Navy Yard shooter?
No, sir. Continue.
Okay. All right. We will start with the Open Skies Treaty, and this is a screenshot from the Department of State. So this is not. This is a legitimate treaty. So let's touch on the Open Skies Treaty. First proposed by Eisenhower in 1955. It would allow the United States and the Soviet Union to partake in reconnaissance flights over each other's territory. Supposedly rejected by Moscow, and it was revived by George H.W. Bush in 1989 and signed in March of 92 by the U.S. and 23 other nations. The treaty legally entered into force on January 1st, 2002. Among the 26 states parties are Russia, Bosnia, Sweden, Herzegovina, Finland, and let's take a look at this document. So this is the Open Skies Treaty. Okay. For those who don't believe it, let's get back to it. Let's also touch on real quick an example of the Open Skies Treaty today. Just back in December, Russia conducted an observation flight over the United States. And that was within the framework on the International Treaty on Open Skies. So, this does happen. This does happen. Russia has flown over American airspace. Okay. So, let us get back to it. So, why was the Open Skies Treaty formed? Well, the main reason is to ensure that the members of the treaty are abiding by the Global Disarmament Bill and taking positive steps to reduce military size, military equipment, firearms, etc. The secondary reason, which is mentioned in the treaty, quote, the treaty is also aimed at building confidence and familiarity among states parties through their participation in the overflights. To summarize, the countries who signed and ratified this treaty want the other states' parties to have a better understanding of the layout of their country. For example, Russia will have a much better understanding of the American landscape if they were going to ever be needed or used in some situation. To touch on this as well, this was back in '93 in the San Jose Mercury News. The Gorbachev Foundation is taking part in these base closings. The group will call for a national conference of the 36 U.S. communities that the base closings affect. So we've got Mr. Gorbachev from Russia assisting us in closing our military bases. So this is also very, very telling. This was a partial transcript of George Bush's War Ultimatum speech. And he admits that part of the reason, obviously not the entire reason, but part of the reason is for disarmament. Quote, "My fellow citizens, events in Iraq have now reached the final days of decision. For more than a decade, the United States and other nations have pursued patient and honorable efforts to disarm the Iraqi regime without war. That regime pledged to reveal and destroy all of its weapons of mass destruction as a condition for ending the Persian Gulf War in '91. It has uniformly defied Security Council resolutions demanding full disarmament." So there is one example. Matt, you got anything to add?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, so let's take a look at the Global Disarmament Bill now. You might see some things that you don't believe, and if you do believe it, you're not going to believe that it's been law for over 50 years. Take it one step farther, and it may be hard to believe that the only president that looked out for the people was the president that signed this into law. So, the Global Disarmament Bill was signed in 1961 by John F. Kennedy, and every president since has worked to enact its provisions. Let's take a look at JFK's own words and figure out what he thought about the Global Disarmament Bill and what his vision for America was. And for those doubters, I will give you guys that link, and you can actually watch him say those words himself. So, let us get started with this speech. So, a little background, quote, "It was during this address to the United Nations General Assembly on September 25th, 1961, that President John F. Kennedy presented this little blue-covered policy book, publication 7277, Freedom from War, the United States Program for General and Complete Disarmament in a Peaceful World." So this is Public Law 87-297. Okay. So this is Future of the United Nations Organization, Proposals for New Disarmament Program by John F. Kennedy. I'm not going to read this entire thing. It's about a 45-minute speech, but we will read enough to prove to you that JFK was not a good president. He didn't care about our sovereignty, our freedom. He didn't care about America. He didn't care about Americans. So let's start. Quote, "Mankind must put an end to war, or war will be put an end to mankind." So let us resolve here that Dag Hammarskjöld, don't know if I pronounced that right, did not live or die in vain. Let us call a truce to terror. Let us invoke the blessings of peace, and as we build an international capacity to keep peace, let us join in dismantling the national capacity to wage war. This will require new strength and new roles for the United Nations. For disarmament without checks is but a shadow, and a community without law is but a shell. Already, the United Nations has become both the measure and the vehicle of man's most generous impulses. Already, it has provided, in the Middle East, in Asia, in Africa this year, in the Congo, a means of holding man's violence within bounds. But the great question which confronted this body in 1945 is still before us, whether man's cherished hopes for progress and peace are to be destroyed by terror and disruption, whether the foul winds of war can be tamed in time to free the cooling winds of reason, and whether the pledges of our charter are to be fulfilled or defied. Pledges to secure peace, progress, human rights, and world law. World law. JFK was an advocate for world law. So, Matt, what do you got to add to that, brother?
JFK's new rules for the United Nations does not guarantee world peace. The violence within bounds mentioned regarding the Middle East, Asia, and Africa has done nothing to resolve global terrorism and has exacerbated the conflicts in these regions. The securing of world law does not equate similarly to securing peace.
Indeed, indeed. So, for the sake of time, let us continue. Quote, today, all of our days of dedication to the Charter must be maintained. The late Secretary General nurtured and sharpened the United Nations' obligation to act, but he did not invent it. It was there in the Charter. It is still there in the Charter. But to give this organization three drivers to permit each great power to decide its own case would entrench the Cold War in the headquarters of peace. Whatever advantages such a plan may hold out to my own country as one of the great powers, we reject it, for we prefer world law. Did you hear that? JFK prefers world law. Quote, in the age of self-discrimination to world war in the age of mass extermination. Now, how many Americans do you think know that JFK even did this speech? How many people do you think know that he prefers world government? How many people? Probably not many. JFK was not he was not the freedom-loving American that stuck up for all of us. Definitely was not. So, Matt, you got anything to add there?
In this portion of the speech, JFK presents a false dichotomy between the speech itself and U.S. policy regarding international law and world war.
Okay. All right. Let us continue. Quote, the weapons of war must be abolished before they abolish us. Men no longer maintain the disarmament. That disarmament must await the settlement of all disputes, for disarmament must be a part of any permanent settlement, and men may no longer pretend that the quest for disarmament is a sign of weakness. For in a spiraling arms race, a nation's security may well be shrinking even as its arms increase. For 15 years, this organization has sought the reduction and destruction of arms. Now that goal is no longer a dream. It is a practical matter of life or death. The risk inherent in disarmament pale in comparison to the risks inherent in an unlimited arms race. It is in this spirit that the recent Belgrade Conference, recognizing that this is no longer a Soviet problem or an American problem, but a human problem, endorsed a program of, quote, general, complete, and strictly and internationally controlled disarmament, end quote. It is in the same spirit that we in the United States have labored this year with a new urgency and with a new, now statutory agency fully endorsed by Congress to find an approach to disarmament which would be so far-reaching, yet realistic, so mutually balanced and beneficial that it could be accepted by every nation. And it is in this spirit that we have presented with the agreement of the Soviet Union under the label, both nations now accept general and complete disarmament, a new statement of newly agreed principles for negotiation. It is therefore our intention to challenge the Soviet Union not to an arms race, but to a peace race, to advance together step by step, stage by stage, until general and complete disarmament has been achieved. All right, Matt, you got anything to add?
Complete disarmament doesn't mean the end of an unlimited arms race, only more victims.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. Okay, so let's see. Quote, it would place the final responsibility for verification and control where it belongs, not with the big powers alone, not with one's adversary or oneself, but in an international organization within the framework of the United Nations. More BS that just shows that JFK was a advocate of world government. I will begin again. Quote, a steady reduction in force, both nuclear and conventional, until it has abolished all armies and all weapons except for those needed for internal order and a new United Nations peace force. He backs the United Nations peace force as well. I therefore propose, on the basis of this plan, that disarmament negotiations resume promptly and continue without interruption until an entire program for general and complete disarmament has not only been agreed upon, but has actually been achieved. So, I mean, obviously, he backs the concept of abolishing all armies and all weapons and turning them over to the United Nations, which, again, advocate for world government. Matt, you got anything?
Yes, I do. The exception for, quote, internal order from the UN's supposed peace force makes the disarmament suspect, and instead appears to be a form of globalized martial law on humanity.
Yeah. I mean, if it's making it, if they're successful, it makes the entire world defenseless. It really does. Like you said, martial law. So we're almost through this. Sorry if it's mundane, but these are JFK's words. These are things that he said in his speech to the United Nations. So, quote, "To destroy arms, however, is not enough. We must create even as we destroy, creating worldwide law and law enforcement as we outlaw worldwide war and weapons. In the world we seek, the United Nations emergency forces, which have been hastily assembled, uncertainly supplied, and inadequately financed, will never be enough. Therefore, the United States recommends that all member nations earmark special peacekeeping units in their armed forces to be on call to the United Nations, to be specially trained and quickly available, with advanced provision for financial and logistical support." For those listening in right now, I recommend you all Google United Nations Charter Article 43. The United States military, for a while, probably since the Charter, has been fighting under the direction of the Security Council in the United Nations. Again, you see that JFK was, he wants a worldwide law and law enforcement, which, for those who thought that JFK was for American sovereignty, think again. That's not the case. Quote, "In addition, the American delegation will suggest a series of steps to improve the United Nations machinery for the peaceful settlement of disputes, for on-the-spot fact-finding, mediation, and education, for extending the rule of international law. For peace is not solely a matter of military or technical problems. It's primarily a problem of politics and people." This is a good section. Quote, "As we extend the rule of law on Earth, so must we also extend it to man's new domain, outer space. All of us salute the brave cosmonauts of the Soviet Union. The new horizons of outer space must not be riven by the old bitter concepts of imperialism and sovereign claims. The cold reaches of the universe must not become the new arena of an even colder war." So JFK just called sovereignty bitter. Okay, we'll continue. To this end, we shall urge proposals extending the United Nations Charter to the limits of man's exploration in the universe, reserving outer space for peaceful use, prohibiting weapons of mass destruction in space or on celestial bodies, and opening the mysteries and benefits of space to every nation. We shall propose further cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control. We shall propose, finally, a global system of communications satellites linking the whole world in telegraph and telephone and radio and television. The day need not be far away when such a system will televise the proceedings of this body to every corner of the world for the benefit of peace. So, Matt, there's a couple of things I want to touch on here. First off, JFK calls sovereignty bitter. We as Americans generally like our sovereignty, for the most part. We do, but apparently it's just bitter, and it's not what JFK wants. He wants world government. He wants a world police. What do you got, Matt?
The creation of, quote, worldwide law does not secure peace for the world, merely an authoritarian front to maim or kill sovereign people across the planet.
Yep. Another interesting point, weather control. So, JFK proposes further cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control. Shout out to Dutch sense. So let's continue here. Quote, my country favors a world of free and equal states. We agree with those who say that colonialism is a key issue in this assembly. On the one hand is the fact that since the close of World War II, a worldwide Declaration of Independence has transformed nearly 1 billion people and 9 million square miles into 42 free and independent states. Less than 2% of the world's population now lives in dependent territories. I do not ignore the remaining problems of traditional colonialism, which still confront this body. Within the limits of our responsibility in such matters, my country intends to be a participant and not merely an observer in the peaceful, expeditious movement of nations from the states, status of colonies, to the partnership of equals. Let us debate colonialism in full and apply the principle of free choice and the practice of free plebiscites in every corner of the globe. So I had never heard of the word plebiscites before, so I looked up the definition for that. Quote, the direct vote of all members of an electorate on an important public question, such as a change in the Constitution. So, very interesting. All right,
regarding weather control, I recommend everyone read the document, Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025. I believe this document is relevant to JFK's speech. Continue on. The, quote, free and equal states claim is fallacious, dependent upon subservience to dictatorial orders from the United Nations so-called peace forces. Please continue, Shane.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. And hi, Chrissy Sumer. So, quote, the events and decisions of the next 10 months may well decide the fate of man for the next 10,000 years. There will be no avoiding these events. There will be no appeal from these decisions. And we in this hall shall be remembered either as part of the generation that turned this planet into a flaming funeral pyre, or the generation that met its vow to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. In the endeavor to meet that vow, I pledge you every effort that this nation possesses. I pledge you that we shall neither commit nor provoke aggression, that we shall neither flee nor invoke the threat of force, that we shall never negotiate out of fear, and we shall never fear to negotiate. Terror is not a new weapon. Throughout history, it has been used by those who could not prevail, either by persuasion or by example. But inevitably, they fail, either because men are not afraid to die for a life worth living, or because the terrorists themselves came to realize that free men cannot be frightened by threats and that aggression would meet its own response. And it is in the light of that history that every nation today should know, be it friend or foe, that the United States has both the will and the weapons to join free men in standing up to their responsibilities. Ladies and gentlemen of this assembly, the decision is yours. Never have the nations of the world has so much to lose or so much to gain. Together we shall save our planet, or together we shall perish in its flames. Save it we can, and save it we must. And then shall we earn the eternal thanks of mankind, and as peacemakers the eternal blessing of God. So that is the speech that JFK gave advocating this global disarmament bill. And Matt, I know you have something to add there, so go ahead and do it, brother.
JFK finalizes his speech by extortion through the threat of terror amongst resistant people across the whole world, including Americans themselves, against the illegitimate authoritative takeover by the United Nations in the lying names of peace, security, and international law. Henry Kissinger said in 2007, during a speech in Istanbul, that, quote, what we in America call terrorists are really groups of people that reject the international system, end quote. If you believe in sovereignty and refusing to buckle under the pressure of the New World Order, to dare believe that you have a right to defend yourself and your loved ones from an internationalist conspiracy of martial law disarmament and death, you are categorized as a terrorist for rejecting the system. Those that impose, quote, international law don't necessarily have your best interests in mind. That is all.
Right on. And we are heading out to break. Stick around. We are going to be discussing, we're going to be looking over the documents in the Global Disarmament Bill. And after that, we will get into SERCO and SODEXO, the biggest corporations you've never heard of. Stick with us. Liberty Under Attack will be right back.
They tell us what it's for. They now have Boy George.
Tired of working that 9-to-5 job or want to spend more time with your family? And want the freedom of making your own hours and working from home? Join our team at DS Domination, where you can make $400 to $1,000 a month learning and building your own business with eBay. Become your own boss, set your hours, and go on vacation when you want to. For more information, go to www.dropshippingwithabay.net. Again, that's www.dropshippingwithabay.net.
This is Niz from Disassociation Nation. As many of you know, I'm an avid vapor. And if you're like me, you're tired of being charged ridiculous amounts of cash for a disappointing experience when flavors just don't deliver. I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to Vapor Renew, a Flavor West company. If you're into mixing and creating your own custom e-liquids, Flavor West has everything you need to make delicious, satisfying flavors. It doesn't matter if you're a flavor chaser or if you love the look and feel of those big, beautiful, puffy plumes. FlavorWest.com can provide you with everything you need. Let's face it, if you vape, e-liquid is an ongoing expense. And if you're a dripper like me, then you know that blowing through a $30 bottle of juice isn't unheard of. Why pay more than you have to? So for excellent quality juice made right here in the United States, head over to VaporRenew.com, where they have hundreds of flavors pre-mixed and ready to vape at the most reasonable prices you'll find. Use coupon code RENU for an extra 10% off your entire order. Great juice at a great price and 10% off. Support companies that support liberty by making your next purchase at Vapor Renew. Or for mixing supplies, don't forget FlavorWest.com.
doTERRA Essential Oils, true gifts of the earth, provide you with the perfect prepper tool, the Family Physician Kit. 10 certified pure, therapeutic-grade oils to provide the care you need for your family's everyday health concerns and potential medical issues you may encounter when sheltering in place or bugging out.
Visit EssentialNewParadigm.info to view the complete product line and ask how you can receive 25% off each and every order.
Don't delay. Your family's health depends on you.
Do you have a group or organization founded on the principles of personal liberty, health freedom, or accountable government? We invite you to check out Same Side Entertainment. Get connected with leaders in the liberty movement like Tom Woods, Kevin Gutzman, Jack Hunter, Robert Scott Bell, Michael Scheuer, and many more. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and our website at www.samesideentertainment.com. Again, that's www.samesideentertainment.com. Same Side Entertainment, connecting you with the education and resources you need.
Thanks for listening to FPRN. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you'd like to start your own show with FPRN, advertise with us, or donate to the network or to your favorite shows, check out our website at www.fprnradio.com.
And welcome back to Liberty Under Attack Radio. Let us get back to it. We've got a lot of information to cover tonight. So first off, I'd like to touch on a few things in the U.S. Code. The Global Disarmament Bill is for the most part in U.S. Code. So for this first part, this is 22 U.S. Code, Section 2552. As used in this chapter, quote, the terms arms control and disarmament mean the identification, verification, inspection, limitation, control, reduction, or elimination of armed forces and armaments of all kinds under international agreements, including the necessary steps taken under such an agreement to establish an effective system of international control or to create and strengthen international organizations for the maintenance of peace. So, we have discovered that the terms arms control and disarmament mean the elimination of armed forces and armaments of all kinds. Very interesting. Let's look at 22 U.S. Code, Section 2571. The Secretary of State is authorized and directed to exercise his powers in this subchapter in such a manner to ensure the acquisition of a fund of theoretical and practical knowledge concerning disarmament and non-proliferation. To this end, the Secretary of State is authorized and directed under the direction of the Presidents to conduct research, development, and other studies to make arrangements for research, development, and other studies, control, reduction, and elimination of armed forces and armaments, so on and so forth. Weapon detection, identification tests. It's all there in U.S. code, guys. It's all there in U.S. code. So, the last one we're going to look at is 22 U.S. Code 2573. Pretty much the same stuff here, but it is in U.S. code. It is in U.S. code. And for those who are still doubting, even though you heard JFK's speech, he was in New York on 11:30 a.m. On September 26, 1961, signing Public Law 87-297. So there's no way to rebuke that. All right, so let's look at the Global Disarmament Bill. Actually, hold on a second. Forgot to switch Procaster. Do apologize. Okay, so let's look at the Global Disarmament Bill in the mainstream media. This is the Los Angeles Times. U.S. Formula for Peace, one military force under United Nations control. Then, in the final edition for that day, it discusses what JFK discussed in his speech. Proposed end of national armies, no army, no navy, no air force. As the U.S. and the USSR's military gets smaller, the peacekeeping machinery, which is kind of a funny thing to call them, but their peacekeeping machinery gets larger, and we see the UN peacekeepers. So, let's summarize the Global Disarmament Bill. Establish an international disarmament organization to reduce armed forces and armaments, to contain and reduce the nuclear threat, to promote the peaceful use of outer space. Stage 2, the powers and responsibilities of the IDO shall be progressively enlarged in order to give it the capabilities to verify the measures undertaken in Stage 2 to further reduce armed forces and armaments to keep the peace. States shall develop further the peacekeeping processes of the United Nations. Progressive steps to be taken during the final phase of disarmament would be directed toward the attainment of a world in which states would retain only those forces and armaments required for internal order. They would also support and provide agreed manpower for a UN peace force, and the UN peace force would be fully functional. So, let's close on the Global Disarmament Bill. It was signed by John F. Kennedy. Well before the UN, you heard this entire speech, but he asked for a commitment from all nations, not an arms race, but a peace race, to advance together step by step, stage by stage, until general and complete disarmament has been achieved. Our sovereignty was indeed stripped in 1945 when the UN Charter entered into force. Now they are looking to continue that by making us defenseless. So, as we showed you in Title II, U.S. Code 2552, disarmament is defined as armed forces and armaments of all kinds under international agreements. And, again, armaments of all kinds. The conspiracy theory to disarm you is in the United States Code. So, John F. Kennedy, another treasonous president. Yes, I know. I've heard his secret society speech. He did warn us to some extent about secret societies, but it was for the wrong reasons. JFK was a Catholic and took his oath to the Vatican. The only secret societies he was attempting to expose were those that were enemies of the Vatican. For example, the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. This ancient war that killed Kennedy ensued when Pope Clement disbanded the Templars in 1312. That's not what we're discussing today, so for more information, watch JFK, The Sacrifice King, by Bill Cooper, available on YouTube. And Global Disarmament Bill was, I guess, the only negative aspect of JFK's administration, but it is huge. Even if that's his only flaw, so to speak, it's still huge. Any leader that was for this country, his people, and their sovereignty wouldn't sell them down the river, as he did by signing and advocating the need for this bill. But a leader that was for the New World Order definitely would do that. They definitely would do that. So, next time liberals or politicians tell you, we don't want your guns, you can tell them with confidence that they are full of crap. So, Matt, you got anything to add right now, brother?
Oh, not right now. Please continue.
Not right now? Okay. All right. Well, let us continue then. So let's start discussing SERCO. I'd like to start with this first article to kind of introduce us to what SERCO really is. So, this is an article from War Resisters International, and the war profiteer for the month for February of 2009 was SERCO. In 1964, SERCO was awarded the first ever private contract for managing a British military site. Since then, SERCO Group plc has grown and grown, becoming an international service company with a portfolio that takes in everything from schools to nuclear weapons via prisons and swimming pools. The percentage of revenue from defense contracts is typically between 25% and 29% and comes from supplying a wide range of services to militaries in the US, UK, Germany, and Australia. SERCO can be seen working as a joint venture with SODEXO in Australia as the SSDS, which we will cover later on. In 2004, the group ventured into Iraq and won the contract to restore air traffic control services to Baghdad and Basra airports. Widely criticized in the U.S. at the time, in 2007, SERCO was hired to oversee the U.S. military's largest contract and contractors in Iraq, reportedly $150 billion, a 10-year contract with Fluor, DynCorp, and KBR. The group's role is to analyze performance contractors' costs, work with the Army to measure contractor performance, and recommend process improvements. According to Truth Out the Company, this quote also serves as a liaison between the other three contractors and between the contractors and the government. So, in Britain, the group has an additional angle in that it is also part of the joint venture company, which holds a 25-year, $5.3 billion contract to manage the United Kingdom's atomic weapons establishment, the factory where Britain's nuclear weapons are built and maintained, which, in the author of this article, really puts them in the genocide profiteers category, which I would have to second that notion myself. So, producer, if you could play clip 1 for us.
Have you guys ever heard of a company called SERCO? Well, it might be the biggest company that you have never heard of. Everyone knows about the private prison industry, the transportation industry, and government agencies. But what if I told you that there was just one company that oversaw almost every facet of all of these sectors? Yep, that's SERCO, the mother of all multinational corporations. SERCO is a $1.5 billion services company based in Hook, North Hampshire in the United Kingdom, whose motto is bringing services to life. So, what the hell does that actually mean? Well, according to their website, SERCO improves the quality and efficiency of essential services that matter to millions of people around the world. The work we do for national and local governments involves us with the most important areas of public service, including health, education, transport, science, and defense. Now, I know it still sounds very vague about what they actually do, but more importantly is how many industries SERCO actually oversees across the entire planet. Since governments from around the world outsource to SERCO, the massive corporation has its tentacles in 16 countries worldwide. They cash in on detention. SERCO runs 7 immigration centers and has a presence on every military base in Australia. They're also the largest operator of private prisons in the UK. SERCO also directs airplanes. They are the largest air traffic controllers in the world, with 54 towers in the U.S. alone. The company also supplies air traffic control in Iraq and the United Arab Emirates. SERCO also moves people on the ground, from Scotland ferries to Dubai metros. But the company not only manages public transport everywhere, but also operates speed track cameras and creates the software for monitoring traffic across London. But don't worry, SERCO's looking out for the kids, guys. They currently have contracts to run every state school in Bradford, England. But they haven't forgotten about Grandma and Grandpa. They're privatizing community centers, too. If you haven't figured it out yet, SERCO is essentially the Swiss Army knife of corporations. SERCO plays doctor, too. Private hospitals are a big industry under the umbrella company. And SERCO has started to acquire hospitals in Australia and England. SERCO is so unbelievably powerful that they even control time. Yep, SERCO has friends in such high places, they have been contracted to set Greenwich Mean Time, or GMT. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Do you think that things like running border patrol and protecting nuclear arsenals should be run by a government body or a private multinational? Well, I'm sure you can guess what I'm getting at next. SERCO does both. Not only do they look over the country's entire nuclear arsenal, they also run the UK's ballistic missile defense system. In fact, their primary purpose of being stationed here in the United States is to supply defense and intelligence services across the nation. Check out their promo video for the U.S. government.
For the Department of Homeland Security, we manage over 62 million active records, helping to keep our nation secure.
Think of it as an integrated system that helps the right person make the right decision at the right time. For the intelligence community, we provide planning, training, program support, and project execution. And the rest, it's classified.
The rest is classified? Guys, we already think you're shady. Is it really necessary to tell us that you have even more secrets? But thanks for the disclaimer. So what branches of the government does SERCO specifically provide services to? Well, the U.S. Army, U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, the Ministry of Ontario, U.S. Navy, U.S. Air Force, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Marine Corps, Federal Retirement Thrift Investment Board, U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, U.S. Department of State, the intelligence community. Whew, let me catch my breath. I just wanted to establish the extent of their reach. But wait, there's more. SERCO is so passionately committed to the U.S. that they're also working with the government to fight cyber terrorism, and they remain passionately committed to the American government's mission. Check it out.
I like to say we don't have to look hard to find the best and brightest. They find us.
We are passionate about the future of our nation, and we embrace our government's mission as our mission.
We are.
We are.
We are.
We are.
We are.
Your mission, our passion.
We are the company that runs the world. But don't worry, they're passionate about swallowing up the world, industry by industry, government by government. Since 1994, they've grown by over 1,200%, and they continue to acquire more contracts and services every day. So how does it happen that a multinational corporation can run things such as the time and the safeguarding of nuclear weapons? Well, about 85% of SERCO's employees are also ex-public servants, so they have the know-how and networking to keep that revolving door going. So why don't we know more about SERCO? Well, that's just the problem, is that this corporation has way too much power and way too much control. There's no doubt that we live in a corporatocracy. The corporate coup d'etat has already taken over. The question is, how are we going to fight it?
The rest is classified. Oh, what a joke. All right, well, let us continue. So I know she already touched on this a little bit, but we're going to go in a little more detail here. Oops. All right, so Department of Agriculture, Department of Commerce, National Weather Service, the National Nuclear Security Administration for the Department of Energy, Medicare and Medicaid Services, Customs and Border Patrol, or Border Protection, excuse me, FEMA, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, the TSA, the Coast Guard, Antitrust Division, Bureau of Prisons, Criminal Division, DEA, FBI, Organized Crime, Drug Enforcement Task Force, United States Marshals. And these are all straight from their website. The majority of the information we got in this that we have for this presentation is literally just off of their own websites. So you can all find this for yourselves pretty easily. Let's continue. OSHA, Bureau of Consular Affairs, FAA, IRS, United States Secret Service, which kind of threw me off a little bit, but oh well. Social Security Administration, Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, the CIA, the Congressional Commission on China, the SEC, the FCC, the FDIC, the FTC, and the Government Accountability Office. And we aren't done yet, so I apologize. Government Printing Office, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Smithsonian Institute, United States Postal Service, and the SEC. And then local governments as well. The city of Chicago uses SERCO to enforce parking violations. Wells Fargo, even some corporations use them as well. So, producer, if you could cue up clip 2 for us. Okay, and we definitely have our eyes on you, SERCO. We definitely do. So, it's a British corporation control the United States government. Well, I mean, maybe not control in their words, but they manage they manage the majority of the United States government. So here's an article, SERCO Inc., a British company, sort of. There's a bit of fanfare over the United States engaging a large British firm to manage the rollout of a really big U.S. law. SERCO Inc. is indeed a part of SERCO Group, an international contracting firm headquartered about an hour southwest of London in Hook, North Hampshire. So, I thought we were trying to get away from the British running our government, but oh well. So we're gonna play a video real quick. We're gonna see SERCO's ethics at work. Now, I want you to think to yourself when we play this clip. Would you trust a company that permits sexual abuse for national or global, quote-unquote, security purposes? Producer, please play clip 3 if you could.
Yarlswood is not fit for purpose. That building is a Category B prison, and there are very vulnerable people there, and they shouldn't be in there, really.
A former senior SERCO official at Yarlswood Detention Centre has spoken out for the first time about his concerns over the treatment of female detainees. He broke his silence after the Observer revealed the company failed to properly investigate an allegation of sexual assault.
A culture of bullying, a culture of intimidation. There was evidence I've seen for myself where officers were going into girls' rooms without knocking.
To be watched by male guard all the time, it really destroyed me more than I was expecting it to be.
Even in the night when you're sleeping, they will just come into your rooms. They make you feel so small and so powerless.
Do you detect a culture of racism inside Yarlswood?
There was a lot of they shouldn't be here, get them out of the country, they're taking our jobs. There was a lot of that culture in there. There was a lady who had severe kidney problems. She had been taken out of the NHS and, quote, unquote, what was said to me, she's taken up the resources within the NHS. She needs to be deported.
The SERCO whistleblower reveals how he learnt of an area inside the detention centre where the alleged abuse of women by male guards took place.
A female senior officer told me, oh, this is where the lady got pregnant. There was a resident that got pregnant by an officer. I was shocked when she said it to me. But she said, this is a blind spot, this is where people come. And the blind spot was it was a corridor that was leading down towards the gym, and it was next door to the gym.
Did you hear of any complaints, or did you witness anything untoward regarding sexual abuse of women by staff?
Yeah, there was an incident that was brought to my attention, a meeting that I'd arranged for this particular individual that was raised. It was disclosed to me that this lady had been sexually assaulted by a member of staff. Which shocked me even more, the following day, I seen him in Yarlswood. I couldn't believe it. I remember walking by him and thinking, isn't that the same guy that was told that this is the guy that abused that lady? Why is he still walking here?
Recent figures released by UKBA reveal a rise in cases of serious self-harm inside Yarlswood. The detention centre recorded 74 attempts last year, compared to 75 in the previous 4 years.
When I was in Yarlswood, I saw women try to commit suicide when they're about to be deported. That's how much being here means to them, that I'd rather die than to go back to the pain that I came from.
I hated myself. The only thing I wanted is just to finish my life. So each day I wake up, I was just planning, what am I going to do today to finish it?
What more do those women have to do to prove to them that where we come from is not safe for us? I don't know. They sleep with guards, that doesn't help. They in the verge of committing suicide, that doesn't help. They still don't get hurt.
Did you feel the mental health needs of the women inside Yarlswood were met?
The lack of engagement with mental health in relation to assessment and safeguards being put in place for people with mental health was very concerning. There was lots of people getting deported and removed without getting assessed properly. So there were vulnerable people getting removed from the country that hadn't had proper assessments.
According to the SERCO whistleblower, Yarlswood should be shut down, investigated, and its detainees released into the community.
In my opinion, I think the individuals should be living in the community. They should be managed in the community like anybody else. These are vulnerable individuals. You don't put vulnerable individuals into a category B prison. You put them into a hospital. It's as simple as that.
Okay, and we're about to head out to break. We'll mention one last thing. If you were wondering, SERCO kept the contract for Yarlwood. That was the place featured in that news clip. So that should definitely make you feel good about this company. We'll be back right after this short break, and we'll finish up SERCO, and we will get into SODEXO. Stick around, Liberty Under Attack Radio. We'll be right back.